Chapter 11. A stitch in time saves nine. This saying was first mentioned and put into writing in 1732. The original version was, "A stitch in time may save nine." The current more assertive version, "A stitch in time saves nine," was written in 1797. The meaning of the proverb is as simple as its words. If one stitches torn clothes while the tear is still tiny, one saves a lot of time, effort, and the greater number of stitches one might need if the tear gets bigger. What makes it hard for most people to implement the wisdom in this proverb is that it involves things in life that are important but not urgent. The human brain has a tendency to focus on the now and to disconnect with an event that lies in the future, even if it's important. We manage to assure ourselves that there is still enough time to deal with it, because we still have months or years ahead. A classic example is how students in schools and colleges prepare for exams. I experienced this firsthand while studying at university. We all knew, and were told several times by our tutors and professors, that it's much easier to plan and prepare for exams much earlier by scheduling time every week well in advance to study for the exams. This was not a difficult task or anything one would consider impossible to do. On the contrary, it was very simple. For the majority of students, however, going for sports or partying with friends was much more enticing than preparing for an exam that in our view was still far away. Needless to say, we were wrong. What we thought was far away was certainly just around the corner, and panic ensued, not just once, I must mention with embarrassment. Suddenly, we were all under pressure and the stress level went through the roof. I would not even describe our actions during this time as studying anymore, but rather cramming. We were trying to make up for lost time by memorizing as much as we could in the time period we had left before the exams. Many of us suffered insomnia during this time because we stayed up extremely late due to time pressure. This, of course, meant that we were putting our health at risk. Suffice to say, all these actions would have been unnecessary had we planned and started preparing for the exam months before that. One of the sad conclusions I made after all that stress was that I could have even performed better in the exams had I started preparing earlier, an awakening that always made me angry at myself. Finances. I once had a very embarrassing experience that really confirms the wisdom of the proverb, "A stitch in time saves nine." I drove into the city of Munich, Germany, where I live, heading for a meeting. Since I was running late, I quickly parked my car without carefully checking whether I was allowed to park at that slot or not. Unfortunately, parking was forbidden at that very slot, something I realized after coming from the meeting because I got a ticket. The penalty was 15 euros. Needless to say, I was not happy about it, but I acknowledged that it was my mistake and thought to myself, I'll wire that amount as soon as I get back home. I placed the ticket on my desk next to other documents and unfortunately forgot about it. A long time went by and I always thought I would do it tomorrow. My day-to-day schedule was extremely full at that time, and I was in the middle of a complicated project at work. Due to procrastination, I ended up having to pay almost 90 euros, including penalties for faulting. This was 6 times the initial amount. To this day, I'm still embarrassed that I was so careless with my money. Every adult working and earning money, either through employment or entrepreneurship, knows that it is important to start as early as possible to put aside money for emergency funds and for retirement. The number of people who actually do that is surprisingly not as high as one would expect. A survey from the American Federal Reserve in 2018, Survey of Household Economics and Decision-Making, revealed that about 40% of Americans would have difficulties paying $400 for unexpected expenses. So, if their dishwasher or car breaks down, they are simply not in the position to pay for it to be fixed without going into debt. This problem is not exclusively American. Many people around the world can relate to this. A couple in California were insolvent after the birth of their beautiful baby girl. When the woman went into labor, she was taken to hospital, and doctors revealed after checking on her that it had to be done through cesarean section. The mother and child had to stay in hospital for about a week because of complications after the operation. The final bill was about $30,000 US. The couple had no hospital insurance and no money had been saved for their emergency fund. I remember once having a talk with a colleague who at 55 realized that he only had about 10 more years of work before he retires, and yet did not have much savings. This was not due to the fact that he had many financial constraints. He admitted that he always thought he still had time to start saving. He just wanted to enjoy life without thinking too much about finances. He spent his last years of retirement working more hours, doing several jobs in order to make up for lost time. He was stressing himself at an age when he was actually supposed to be enjoying the fruit of his many years in the workforce. A nightmare for anyone on the way to retirement. It dawned on him that he could have retired with less money than he had imagined. Health. Our health is without a doubt our greatest asset. And the proverb, "A stitch in time saves nine," most certainly applies very much in areas concerning our health. Most people know that the three major determinants for our physical well-being, as far as health is concerned, are good nutrition, regular exercise, and enough rest or sleep. Acting on these three factors early enough goes a great way towards enhancing our health. In 2003, an American independent filmmaker, Morgan Spurlock, wanted to find out the effects of eating habits based mostly on fast food. He made plans to eat at McDonald's for a period of 30 days straight. Before this, he went to his doctor and other specialists and had several checkups and tests to evaluate his health status. During the 30-day period, he ate at McDonald's 3 times a day, averaging 5,000 kilocalories per day. Health experts recommend 2,500 kilocalories per day with a healthy, balanced diet. The results were, as expected, really bad. His body weight had increased by 11.1 kilograms. His cholesterol went up to 230 milligrams per deciliter. There was much more fat around his liver than before, and he experienced mood swings and sexual dysfunction. After the experiment was over, it took Spurlock about 14 months to lose the weight he had gained in those 30 days. This was just a 1-month experiment, but it goes a long way to show just how much damage eating fast food can cause to one's body. One may argue that no one does that. Well, maybe. However, it's no secret that a lot of people consume such foods regularly. As long as they are young and healthy, they believe that they have time to someday start eating nutritious foods. As it is often the case, however, many realize this when it's too late. Medical experiments confirm that many of the illnesses today can be traced back to many years of eating non-nutritious foods. There was an article in a magazine in my hometown about a young man who had such a phobia of going to the dentist that he basically avoided going for a yearly checkup for about 7 years. He mentioned that he was so scared of going to the dentist because he thought it would be painful. As the years went by, plaque was gathering around his teeth and pushing his gums back, which then led to bleeding every time he brushed his teeth. He knew he really needed to go to the dentist, but he always postponed it. By the time he was forced by the worsening conditioning of his teeth and gums to visit the dentist, a lot more work had to be done, and the pain was much worse than it would have been had he done it years before. In the fight against cancer, early diagnosis can make a huge difference in the chances of healing. Cancer research in the United Kingdom has revealed that 90% of women diagnosed with breast cancer at the earliest stage survive for at least 5 more years, compared to only 15% diagnosed at an advanced stage. That is a massive percentage difference. With ovarian cancer, the percentage difference is even bigger, 90 to 5%. The message here is clear and simple. The earlier it is detected and dealt with, the better. The wisdom in this proverb is unquestionable. It applies to multiple areas of our lives. Automobile lovers know that at least every 2 years, the car has to be taken for inspection. Those who find no time to do this or want to save money end up having to pay a lot more money than they would have had to pay had they gone earlier, because of more wear and tear. If you procrastinate on tidying up your apartment or home, you are suddenly overwhelmed when you realize that you have visitors the next day and you might need hours to clean and tidy up. A stitch in time does indeed save 9.